for this very extensive, detailed description of Dhruva Maharaj. Where we ended yesterday was in Alakapuri, which is the capital of the Yakshas. We're in the northern region, somewhere in the Himalayas. Dhruva went there for taking to task the Yakshas for one of the Yakshas having killed his brother. The brother at that stage was yet unmarried. He was in the forest hunting. One Yaksha, doesn't say what was the circumstance, but one Yaksha killed him. That news came to Dhruva. Dhruva got his chariot, apparently took his whole army along with him. Must have been interesting traveling through the Himalayas with an army and a chariot. We somehow reached a valley area where the capital of the Yakshas was found. He blew very, very loudly on his conch shell. The Yakshas became very irritated. They came out with a massive army. We heard the number, 130,000 soldiers. Must have been a big city, because that's just the soldiers. Battle between the two. The Yakshas displayed their mystic powers. Dhruva became a little bewildered. The sages uttered a few words that took away his bewilderment, reminded him to take his Narayana Astra, which had mystic powers. As soon as he fixed the Narayana Astra to his bow, poof, the mystic display went away. And many arrows and many thises and that's came from that Astra, defeating the Yakshas very soundly. And Soivavamato came to give him advice to give up Krodha and remember Vishnu. So that's where we are. Soivavamato gave various reasons, starting with text 7 of this chapter, chapter 11, to stop Dhruva Maharaj from killing the Yakshas. His first was this atiroshena, excessive anger, is sinful. Papamana. Here's the Sanskrit of the verse. So, it is part of a Kshatriya's duty, in fact, when circumstance requires, to be very strong. And to be very strong may be an exhibition of anger. If someone is to be punished, and it takes strength to do that punishment, like a wrongdoer, and they need to be apprehended, so it may take some strength. But excessive anger is sinful for a king, for anyone. Manu said, "My dear son, please stop. It is not good to become unnecessarily angry. It is the path to hellish life. Now you are going beyond the limit by killing yakshas who are actually not offenders." So we've been mentioning this, for a death penalty is due for one who engages in murder of a human, but it's not all the yakshas, and he's going beyond. So he's issuing a danger signal here. Atiroshena means unnecessary, with unnecessary anger. When Dhruva Maharaj went beyond the limit of necessary anger, his grandfather, Soivavamato, immediately came to protect him from further sinful action. Now, Prabhupada writes about what this image is showing. In modern warfare, it's not the punishable person is dealt with, but many innocent persons become harmed because there isn't a sense of proper, guided by scripture kind of conduct when force is needed. And according to Manu, Prabhupada explained it specifically. This is sinful. So, a little stepping back from what anger is, let's say the necessary kind or appropriate kind. It's an emotion that has a sequence: thinking, feeling, and willing. These are the functions of the mind. Thinking, contemplate something, and after contemplating something, there's a feeling about that something, and when that matures, an idea to do something, a will. In a situation which triggers anger, in a mood of detachment and aided by intelligence, buddhi, one should consider, what was that thought which propelled me to feel angry? Is that thought me-centered, or is it in harmony with Dharma? Again, sometimes becoming very strong and having a strong feeling of anger is appropriate. Sometimes. Particularly for a Kshatriya, it's appropriate. In other words, there is such thing as transcendental anger, but there's also such a thing as mundane. The same sequence, the contemplation for dharmic exhibition of anger, has the same sequence, but is properly guided by Dharma. In Bhagavad Gita, Krishna writes, before giving up this present body, if one is able to tolerate the urges of the material senses and check the force of desire and anger, he is well situated and is happy in this world. So it's a material force. It's a nice teaching. Spend a little bit of time on it. Narottam Das Thakur writes rather extensively that on the science of emotion, there are appropriate exhibitions of emotion that are transcendental. For the example that's given for anger is Hanuman. He exhibited transcendental anger when going to Lanka, doing what he did. It was to vindicate Sita and to send fear into them because Ram's army is coming and they could surrender and just give Sita back and everything would be made nice again. But he was angry, transcendentally angry. Or Prabhupada explains, when Krishna was speaking Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna, one can argue that he was inciting Arjuna to anger, because you can't fight in that kind of, where lives are at risk without anger. So when there's transcendental anger that is for the purpose of the Supreme Lord and not otherwise, that's transcendental anger. It has its place. And if it's not for the purpose of the personality of Godhead and his service, then it doesn't have its place. So being able to control that anger, this is chapter 5 of Bhagavad Gita, there's urges that may make one angry, and if one can tolerate those urges and instead fix your consciousness on serving the Supreme, that person can be happy in this world. So in addition to it's sinful, he then describes to Dhruva, this isn't befitting our dynasty. Now in modern life, that's not a big deal. In Vedic life, it's a big deal. That is, you're representing not just yourself, but you're representing others in a lineages of great personalities. You're representing many great personalities. Say for us, we're representing our founder Acharya. When we're moving about and doing and living and conducting ourselves. Of course, not everybody will know that we're Hare Krishna or ISKCON devotees, but many people will know. Just on the way over here from Chicago, we're waiting for our luggage for quite some time, in fact. And a lady came up and said, like, what? She didn't say, what's your costume? But are you with a religious organization? I said, yes. What is that? I said, Hare Krishna. Can you tell me a little? So, oh, there's a temple in Portland. Oh, that's nice. Where's that temple in Portland? So, just by dressing in the attire of a Vaishnav, some people may already know this means this uniform, and Sika and Tilak, this means the Hare Krishna devotee, especially in an American body or Western body. And then as I'm conducting myself, supposing they don't know, whether they know or they don't know, it's reflecting on the whole of the Hare Krishna movement. If I make some misbehavior, it's not about me, it's about the organization. If there's some good behavior, it's some appreciation for the organization, not just about me. I mean, I understand that as I move about. I'm representing Prabhupada, whether people know Hare Krishna movement or not. And in amongst cultured people, they want to represent those who they're in the line of in a proper way. There was an argument with Arjuna. You're representing you're from a line of great kings, and this doesn't behoove one who's from a line of great kings. So that's what is being said to Dhruva. Here's Soivavamato and Shatarupa. And the Soivavamato and Shatarupa, they're the head of a dynasty. And Soivavamato is saying, you're part of our dynasty. So it's not fitting our dynasty. And the virtuous will condemn this behavior. So it's the third reason. It's sinful, it's not befitting our dynasty. So for cultured people, these are very strong statements. For people that are uncultured, they don't mean anything. Like, I don't care. Unruly, undisciplined. But so it's discipline comes with culture. Now, 4:11:8. I don't have them. Do you have a Bhagavatam here? Can you find that verse? The picture on the bottom right is a picture of the 12 Mahajans, because Soivavamato is one of the 12 Mahajans. Who are the Mahajans? Mahajana, great souls. The list of the great souls, or Mahajans, is given by Yamaraj, who is one of the great Mahajans. And in these pictures, here's the other ones. Yamaraj is over there on the middle right. He is giving a decision about someone who's brought before him who's been sinful. Janaka, Bhishma, Shukadeva Goswami, Bali Maharaj, Brahmanarda, Shiva, Kapila, Prahlad, four Kumaras, Yamaraj, Soivavamato. These are great Mahajans. I haven't, yeah. It's right here. The verse says, "My dear son, the killing of the sinless yakshas, which you have undertaken, is not approved by authorities, and it does not befit our family, which is supposed to know the laws of religion and irreligion." So there's three reasons. Killing many for one person's fault out of affection for your brother Uttama. Well, the impetus was affection for his brother Uttama, but it doesn't mean you can just go on a rampage and kill people. Bodily identification, just like animals, is not the path of the sadhus. Here's text 10. One should not accept the body as the self, and thus, like animals, here's the like animals, like animals, kill the bodies of others. This is especially forbidden by saintly persons who follow the path of devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So don't behave like an animal, but follow the path of Dharma. This is sadhunam. Who's a sadhu? Sadhu. I like this definition. Sadhu is one who's attached to sat. Is a sadhu. So sadhu, there's descriptions, the characteristics of a sadhu. Sadhu bhushanam is described, titikshava krunika. This is a nice verse from Kapila Dev's teachings to Devahuti. He is advising Devahuti. Devahuti's in a quandary. First, she's feeling separation from her husband because she's again gone into the forest for meditation. And she's with her son Kapila, but she knows Kapila's not going to stay permanently either. And so, how it's going to maintain my Krishna consciousness? I'm already feeling separation, and soon I'm going to feel further separation from you. And his advice was very good. You should, very good question, you should seek association of sadhus. So there's a whole sadhu sangastaka section. It's very nice. Somebody just asked me, what are some good astakas to recite regularly? So that's a good one. It's in Canto 3, Chapter 25. Kapila Dev's instructions to Devahuti. And it's a very strong section on the significance of sadhu sangha. So, attached to sat, and there's characteristics. What makes them saintly? And it's here in the verse, Rishi Keshanu Vartanam. Rishi Keshanu Vartanam. Like Narada, Rishikena, Rishikesha Sevanam, Bhaktir Uchate. That's Narada Pancharatra. This is the qualification of a sadhu. They're engaged in devotional service where their senses are fully engaged in the service of the master of the senses. So Dhruva Maharaj is being reminded here that you're a devotee of Vishnu. Remember? Your anger has covered that remembrance. So I'm reminding you, you're Vishnu's devotee. You've been blessed by him. And so you should act in a way that's respectful and representative of him. This is from text 11, this line here. Aradjapa Dudradhyam, very difficult to propitiate. So the personality of Godhead, he's already destined him, Vishnu Tat Paramam Padam. It's something that's very difficult to achieve. It's already been guaranteed to you. Your destiny is going to be Vaikuntha. So please act accordingly. Dhruva, please act accordingly. And, it's a nice chastisement or reminder or reprimand. Very nice. Dhruva's qualified, so he gets it. At the same time, we'll hear, he has to go on a little bit further because Dhruva was very attached to his brother. You have worshipped the Lord as Sarva Bhutatma Bhavana, which means with thoughts that he is in all beings, so this unnecessary killing is not befitting you. Here's text 11. It is very difficult to achieve the spiritual abode of Hari. In the Vaikuntha planets, but you are so fortunate that you are already destined to go to that abode by worshiping him as the supreme abode of all living beings. So it's a realignment exercise through sound. His mind, filled with anger, has directed him to inappropriate activity for a Vaishnav, sudurachar. And this is the course correction. Sound. Because you are pure devotee of the Lord is always thinking of you, and you are also recognized by all his confidential devotees. Your life is meant for exemplary behavior. I am therefore surprised. Why have you undertaken such an abominable task? It's a gentle reprimand. I'm surprised. Vasu Mana. One of the, this is a little teaching. In Vishnu Sahasranam, one of the 1,000 names of Vishnu is Vasu Mana. And in Vishwanath Chakrabarti Thakur's commentary on the 1,000 names of Vishnu, he gives an explanation. Vasu Mana is one time Krishna was sitting in meditation, as you see here, and he was smiling in his meditation. So Yudhisthira went to pay his respects to him in the morning. And Krishna was engaged in meditation, so he didn't interrupt him. He came back later, and he was still engaged in meditation, so he didn't interrupt. He came back later, and Krishna had completed his meditation. So, very innocently, Yudhisthira asked him, what was it that you were, or who was it that you were meditating upon? And Krishna said, I was meditating on Bhishma. Bhishma previously was a Vasu. And Vasu Mana was Krishna's thinking of Vasu within his mind. Because Bhishma was always thinking of me, therefore I'm always thinking of him. Another term is this mamata. Very similar. One who accepts Krishna as their all in all. Krishna accepts such a Vaishnav, a devotee of the Lord, as his all in all. He gives himself to his devotee. So that's the message of Soivavamato. You've already been accepted by the Lord, and you've been accepted by the devotees of the Lord. You're meant for exemplary character, so it's very surprising that you're taking on such a difficult task. Very, very, very sweet and gentle reminder. From Bhagavad Gita, for one who sees me everywhere and sees everything in me, I am never lost, nor is he ever lost to me. Similar expression, this is from Krishna to the devotee Arjuna. This is the devotee Soivavamato to Dhruva about his relationship with Vishnu. You've lost, you've forgotten, you become covered over by that special position that you have in relation to Vishnu. Please wake up. Please conduct yourself in the appropriate manner. Stop killing. Again, titikshaya karunaya maitriya chakila jantushu. The Lord is very satisfied with his devotee when the devotee greets other people with tolerance, mercy, friendship, and equality. Nice. So why do we, which comes first? Good qualities, and then Krishna is pleased, or the intention of pleasing Krishna, and then good qualities come? The explanation from the Bhagavatam is, first comes the attachment to Krishna, and from the attachment to Krishna, Krishna will then decorate his devotees with good qualities. Maybe you know the verse. Yasyasti bhaktir bhagavati kinchana sair vair ganais tatra samasate sara harab abhaktasya kuto mahadguna. There's no mahadgunas, no good qualities for those who are abhaktas. Harab abhaktasya kuto mahadguna. Manovrate nasati davato bahi. It's a nice verse. But the first part says, for those who are devotees, they become decorated. Krishna is the decorator. And he has the decorations, the good qualities, and he decorates his devotees with good qualities. Krishna decorates devotees, his devotees, with good qualities. So some persons, one way to think of this is, I really don't have to try for good qualities, I just have to try for bhakti. And when bhakti comes, Krishna will decorate me with good qualities. However, there's another way to look at the same understanding. When bhakti is there, and as bhakti becomes awakened, in our lives, through the devotional process, bhakti is becoming awakened. I was just listening this morning, to a lecture that Prabhupada gave in Hyderabad, 1974, on Bhagavad Gita 7.1. And he was indicating those in the audience who were his disciples. And he said because of their, who knows the Sanskrit for Bhagavad Gita 7.1? Maya sakta manak partha yogan yunjan madashraya asamshayam samagramam yata gyas yasi tajtrinu. So, Maya asakta mana. When the mind becomes attached to Krishna, that's the topmost yoga, because Krishna is describing the method of achieving the topmost yoga, which is the last verse of chapter 6. Maya sakta manak partha. So he was pointing to the Hyderabad people in the assembly. Over here, there's my Western American European disciples, and they're very attached to Krishna. 3-4 years ago, they didn't even know Krishna, and now they're very attached to Krishna. Saying they come from wealthy families. They're disciples. They're bribed by their parents. Come, we'll give you wealth. Just give up attachment to Krishna. But they won't give up attachment to Krishna, Anyway, they come from good families. They come from good background. But they left all that because of attachment to Krishna. So detachment is a quality, a characteristic of a Vaishnava. Not that you just trash things, but seeing the place of happiness is in these things is not the life of a Vaishnava. So the things may be there, the things may not be there. Sometimes there's greater prosperity, sometimes there's greater difficulty. And the finance department, that's okay, because it's not the source of happiness. Anyway, attachment to Krishna is the primary means where other good qualities come. Now, supposing you're trying to be a devotee, we're all trying to be devotees, and then that means we want to please Krishna. We want to see Krishna smile. So one of the things that we'll want to do, we want to see Krishna smile, is we'd like to have qualities that will make Krishna smile. My language is, that's the horse, and it pulls the cart. So I'd like to put something in the cart, because the goal is to please Krishna. So making friendship with Vaishnavas, showing mercy to the innocent, showing equality and not competition with peers, being very tolerant of some discomfort or some circumstance. In this case, it's pushing his anger, so be tolerant. And don't be intolerant. Don't be wild. Don't be filled with anger. So you're a devotee. For the pleasure of Krishna, stop these bad qualities and replace them with good qualities. The Lord is very satisfied with his devotee, Dhruva, when the devotee greets other people with tolerance, mercy, friendship, and equality. This is speaking about relationships. When the devotee greets other people. So how to have a relationship that is pleasing to Krishna. How to have relationship with others that's pleasing to Krishna. The message in the verse. In the first line, titikshaya. So someone does something that's disturbing. I got a letter just today. Somebody they didn't give the detail, but disturbed by another devotee. So, not to say the other devotee's a bad person, but just something they said or did, and it kind of sticks with them, something that they said or did. They can't get over it. So you have to tolerate and forgive. These are mode of goodness qualities that follow behind one who's a devotee. You can try independently to develop the mode of goodness qualities. But the rocket fuel, the propellant, is bhakti. and naturally good qualities will follow, and that's very pleasing to Krishna. These are very nice ways that Soivavamato is reminding Dhruva what he should do or not do. The Supreme Lord, the soul of all beings, is pleased when a madhyama is titikshaya, tolerant of superiors, and when ill-treated by envious, karunaya, merciful to inferiors and the ignorant, maitriya, friendly towards equals, and samatvena, takes others' happiness and distress as his own. Nice. Just yesterday, somebody sent me an interview, a podcast interview with a ISKCON devotee teacher, someone that was born in a devotee family. She went to Gurukul, in Urmila's Gurukul in Detroit years and years and years ago. And fast forward, she's now in her mid-40s. And she's a teacher. She has 3 boys. And she teaches in the Dallas, they call it the TKG Academy. But she just deals with young ones, 5 to 7 or something like that. And she's written a book. And so there's an podcast interview with her, and she's really gifted. But she's very concise and incisive, very clear about stages of a human being's emotional development, including in children, but also adults. And there's a stage where when the child's personal needs, without all the details of what she said, she can go there, you can download it. It's a bestseller on Amazon.com, and she is offering her book for free, a PDF, I guess, a digital version. There's parenting is an important thing. Child care is an important thing. Child education, Sunday schools, etc., important thing. So what she has to say is I watched it twice. She's really good. Really good. Very good. But she tells the story of a child that was disturbed when he came into her school. And then there was a situation that came out. This is, little boys in a school. And without all that, she was really amazed when one boy was holding scissors, the other boy was moving his chair. The boy that was moving his chair unintentionally put the chair down firmly on the other boy's toe or foot. And the one whose foot it landed on, it hurt. And when it hurt, the scissors that were in his hand went flying. His arms flailed. And fortunately, the other boy was hit not by the pointed part of the scissors, but the blunt part of the scissors. And he started to cry because he was hit by a flying pair of scissors. And then one of the boys said to the other boy, because they were both hurt by the other one, "Oh, are you hurt? Is there anything I can do to help you?" She said, as a teacher, I felt, wow, this is a breakthrough. It's the sign of consciousness development where there's compassion for another's suffering, even when you're suffering. You follow? It's a stage, and that's possible, according to what she was saying, when the child feels their need, their self-identity is understood, they're feeling contented within themselves, then they can come to the stage of being concerned about others. There's this whole very nice explanation she offers. So it's a bhakti principle. And it's a bhakti principle is pleasing Krishna. And when one is interested in pleasing Krishna, and that's the sense of one's self-identity, then one can take others' happiness or unhappiness as their own. There's compassion. Say it without compassion, it's not a sign of advanced consciousness. Without empathy, it's not a sign of advanced consciousness. But how you can have advanced consciousness signs without advanced consciousness? So the first business is to become well situated in Krishna consciousness. Now, Dhruva has already achieved that, and he's being reminded. These are your characteristics, and this is the characteristic that should be exhibited because it's pleasing to Krishna. Another verse in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 6. I consider that practicing yogi who sees equally everything as equal to himself in all circumstances, whether in happiness or suffering, to be the topmost yogi. Nice. There's symmetry in the Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita's teachings. And this nice teaching, this young devotee that's written a book about parenting and child education. Do you want to be free from the effects of the modes of material nature? Do you want to become free from the tendencies of gross and subtle bodies? Do you want to experience the real mood of service? Of course, check the box. And then what? Then the motive when considering how you're going to respond to a situation is that Krishna should be pleased. Here's the next verse. One who actually satisfies the Supreme Personality Godhead during one's lifetime becomes liberated from the gross and subtle material conditions, thus being freed from all material modes of nature, he achieves unlimited spiritual bliss. It sounds like a Bhagavad Gita verse, but it's Soivavamato to Dhruva. Notice in the Sanskrit, jiva mukto, jiva nirmukto, brahma nirvanam richati. So the path of bhakti not only is meant for exhibiting good quality, but the path of bhakti is meant to take us to the transcendental position. And when you're in the transcendental position above the modes of material nature, unlimited spiritual bliss, Brahma Nirvanam Richati. Prabhupada writes in his purport, karmis try to satisfy themselves by sense gratification, and jnanis try to satisfy themselves by subtle activities or mental speculation and thinking themselves to be God. Yogis also try to satisfy themselves by thinking that they can achieve different mystic perfections. Well, the teaching of Chaitanya Charitamrita is bhukti, mukti, siddhi, kami, sakale ashanta. Bhukti, karmis, wanting sense gratification. Mukti, wanting liberation. Siddhi is wanting mystic perfections. Bhukti, mukti, siddhi, kami, sakale ashanta. One can't be peaceful as long as those desires are there. But only devotees try to satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The devotee's process of self-realization is completely different from the process of karmis, jnanis, and yogis. Everyone else is trying to satisfy himself, whereas the devotee tries to satisfy the Lord. Now, this is very practical. It's like philosophical and notional, but it's also very practical. Because if that's the driving force, then that's what's going to determine what you do. Let's just take, a worldly example of morality. You don't steal. Why don't you steal? Because that's a moral principle to live by. You don't steal. Don't lie. Don't speak untruth. Why? Because that's a principle to live by. Those who are trained and abide by principles of goodness, they don't steal, they don't lie, they don't cheat, they don't this, they don't that, because that's how to live your life. It's a code of conduct. Higher than that is the quality of satisfying the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And those who are they're fixed in the service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, fixed in devotion, then the senses and the mind are directed by that power. It's a transcendental power that controls the material energy, the mind and the senses, material energy. Prabhupada goes on in the purport. By working to please the Lord, by engaging his senses in the Lord's loving service, the devotee is immediately situated on the transcendental platform, and he enjoys unlimited blissful life. This is meant to show the four varnas: Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Shudra. There's the devotee. Jivan nirmukto, that phrase is used in the verse. Here's the explanation from Prahlad's teachings. Jiva nirmukto means freed from the subtle body, which is beyond Brahma Nirvana, as described by Prahlad in 7.7.37. Now notice the picture is a Buddhist concept, Buddhist image that Buddha also taught of going beyond, going to the stage of nirvana. The stage of nirvana is the stage of cessation of material existence, or being freed from the subtle body. But beyond that is what's being described here. Beyond Brahma Nirvana is described here. Jiva Nirmukto. So that's the reminder that's going to Dhruva. You're meant, you've experienced it, you're disconnected from it right now. Pause, make that connection once again. Here's the context for the 7th canto verse. The wise know that direct contact with the Lord, which includes the happiness of Brahman, destroys samsara for the sinful persons possessing material bodies in this world. Therefore, worship the Paramatma in your heart. Prakatayar gunai mimukta means, this is Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's commentary, it means that not only is he freed from the gunas of Prakriti, but is specially liberated beyond merging in Brahman. So there's a happiness beyond Brahma Sukha or Brahma Nirvana or being Brahman realization of the Sat feature of the Absolute. That's the Ananda feature of the Absolute. You with me? Sat, Chit, Ananda. And Bhakti brings that Ananda. And the teaching is about the Bhakti process, but the practical application is Dhruva. This isn't the platform of real happiness. It's not real happiness is pleasing the personality of Godhead. You're disconnected from that position. Please reconnect. When Manu saw that Dhruva Maharaj was still dissatisfied because of his brother's death, he further explains. So these are our next series of verses. The Supreme Lord is the ultimate cause. What is the nature of all things we perceive? Who is the killer and who is killed? Some more philosophy. Who is the killer and who is killed? Obviously the soul isn't. So what is it? Here we go. He says in the next verse, women and men arise from bodies made from the 5 elements. From their interaction, more women and men appear. Dhruva Maharaj was indirectly advised not to be afflicted by his brother's death, because bodily relationships are material. This is commentary on verse 15. I'm going to read verse 15. The creation of the material world begins with the 5 elements. And thus everything, including the body of a man or a woman, is created of these elements. By the sexual life of man and woman, the number of men and women in the material world is further increased. So the commentary is, these are material relationships, Dhruva. As king, O king, as the creation of bodies takes place in this way, so does the maintenance and destruction of bodies take place by the action of the gunas. So the Maya of the Supreme Lord. So, detachment through transcendental knowledge. There's the eternal, and there's the temporary. You're attached to the temporary, don't be attached to the temporary. It says the movements of Prakriti. My dear King Dhruva, it is simply by the illusory material energy of the Supreme Personality Godhead and by the interaction of the 3 modes of material nature that creation, maintenance, and annihilation take place. Now, not only in relation to your brother, but in relation to all species. Creation is the product of passion, maintenance is the product of goodness, destruction is the product of ignorance. Maintenance is also a tendency within the modes of nature. So here's text 17. Those who are transcendental even to the material modes of nature are situated in the mode of pure goodness. They attain eternal life in the spiritual world. That's where you belong, in the spiritual world. Vishnu said that's your destination. So don't be attached to the temporary. How can creation, maintenance, and destruction of bodies take place without some foundation of consciousness? Turn attention to Sat. And don't be so absorbed in the Asat. Nima Tamatram, you know this phrase, right? Nima Tamatram Bhava Sabya Sachin. There it is, Nima Tamatram. My dear Dhruva, the Supreme Personality Godhead is uncontaminated by the material modes of nature. He is the remote cause of the creation of this material cosmic manifestation. When he gives the impetus, many other causes and effects are produced, and thus the whole universe moves, just as iron moves by the integrated force of a magnet. Just as iron moves by the integrated force of a magnet, so the whole material creation moves by the integrating force of the Creator. And by that integrating force of the Creator, there's sometimes integration and sometimes disintegration. There's no cause to lament. It's just the movements of Prakriti. Give your attention to consciousness. Give your attention to Sat. And by giving attention to Sat and having a proper understanding of Asat, you can be properly balanced. Everything is happening by the energy of the Supreme Lord. This is commentary. But atheistic philosophers say that everything is just the interaction of material elements. Everything, so it's mechanistic science. Here's a little background. There's a group of devotees that formed a branch of the Bhaktivedanta Institute in Gainesville, Florida. They've called it the Bhaktivedanta Institute for Higher Studies. And one of the projects they're working on presently is one of Sariputa's books was mechanistic and non-mechanistic science. And there's a number of chapters that are on different topics. And the devotees who are participating in this dialogue, they're being assigned one chapter to make a presentation on the chapter before the other learned fellows. The other learned fellows will critique the presentation. They're to modify their presentation so that it's a representation of Sariputa's book, chapter by chapter, on the distinction between mechanistic and non-mechanistic science. So mechanistic science says there's only one thing. There's matter. There's no spirit. And there's laws that govern matter, so you can say matter and the laws that govern matter. And that's all that there is. There's matter and interaction of matter according to the laws of nature. Just like you can combine baking soda and, make a chemical reaction. All it is chemicals interacting according to the laws of nature, and life is simply that. Nothing more. And Prabhupada writes in the purport, but one cannot produce life by such interaction of chemicals. There are 8,400,000 different species of life with different wishes and different actions. So this is now getting into cause and effect and different principles of causation that bring about different effects. Here's Prabhupada's purport. The potter's wheel rotates and several varieties of earthen pots come out. There are many causes for earthen pots, but the original cause is the potter, who sets a force on the wheel. The force comes by his superintendence. So Upadan Maya and Nimitta Maya, and so there's different causes, principles of causation. The clay is a cause, but it's the material cause. And then there's the remote cause, and that's the potter. And then there's the instruments. There's the potter's wheel. There's the tools that the potter may use, and so forth. So the different principles of causation, the point is, the supreme cause of all causes is the ultimate cause. And he's trying to remind Dhruva, if Vishnu is aloof, how is everything being done? By the agitation of the modes. I'm going to read. Here's chapter 11, verse 18. This is the philosophy section. He's giving a Sankhya philosophy class to Dhruva. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, by his inconceivable supreme energy, time, causes the interaction of the three modes of material nature, and thus varieties of energy become manifest. So the remote action of time. It appears that he is acting, but he is not the actor. He is killing, but he is not the killer. Thus it is understood that only by his inconceivable power is everything happening. So things are created and things are destroyed through the force of time. Things come into being through the force of time. Things are maintained by the force of time, and things are withdrawn by the force of time. And so it looks like he's doing things, but he's not doing things. But he's doing things through the agency of his energies. By the agitation of gunas through time, things start to manifest. As time He is indestructible, beginningless, and inexhaustible, yet he causes the beginning and end of all that is temporary, exhaustible, and limited. Now this is, for some people it's hard to grasp, for some people it's boring, not just hard to grasp, and some persons it's like, what's this doing in here? How does this relate to me? So the relationship has everything to do with understanding who we are and what our position in relation to all things is. I mean, I'll just a little pause out for a moment on what's being said by Soivavamato. I'm beginning a little exercise of preparing a 2-part seminar for the devotees in China on what our acharyas have to say about Buddhism, other than what the main comment about Buddhism is from our acharyas, or from the Bhagavatam. Buddha wanted to stop the violence to animals. So ahimsa was a very important teaching for Buddha. So that most of the writing is about that. So what else did he have to say? So because in China, my experience from visiting there for some number of years, 10, 12 years, is they're familiar to some degree with Buddhism. People that have spiritual interest either say that they're Buddhist or they have some affiliation with Buddhism because it's China, and Buddhism became very prominent in China. There's some interesting history which goes back a long time. I won't go into that, how Buddhism came into China. And then different divisions of Buddhism came into China, and so forth and so on, and so forth and so on. It has a long history. But what is Buddhism? Scratch the surface a little bit, and most of the devotees, most of the Chinese people, most of the people that consider themselves Buddhist, don't even know what Buddhism is. There's a devotee, a disciple, that's a Hare Krishna devotee disciple, that's the president of a Buddhist temple, and he doesn't really know what Buddhism is. What to speak of the people that are in the monastery, what to speak of the people in general. So what have our acharyas said about Buddhism? Because there's different brands. Lots of different brands. But there's some common threads, common essential teachings. And the common essential teachings go back to what's the basis and support of everything? Pratishta, in the Sanskrit terminology, or that which is the source of everything. Janmadhyasya yataha, that which is the source of everything. Vedanta, from Vyasadev's writings, Vedanta is searching for the same. What is the source of everything? And from Vedanta Sutra, we Vaishnavas have a certain understanding. It's from Bhagavad Gita. What's the source of everything? Krishna. Aham sarvasya prabhavo matak sarvam pravartate. Very, very direct. He is the source of everything. From him everything comes. But what does Buddhism say? Buddhism says everything comes from nothing. And therefore what's existing is nothing. And at the end everything is nothing. The goal is nothingness. And it's only a mistake to think that there's somethingness. There's some borrowed concepts from Vedic culture. There's the concept of samsara. What it is that's transmigrating body after body, that's not clear. There's different versions of in divisions and sects of Buddhism that say what it is that's transmigrating. But it's actually, there's nothing, bottom line, there's nothing that's transmigrating because nothing is. Shunyavad. That from which everything comes is shunya. So what exists is shunya, and the goal is shunya. Now, Vaishnava teaching is, this is what we're hearing in this section, there is a source of everything. And that source of everything is Vishnu. He's encountered, he had a face-to-face encounter with Vishnu. So now, what Soivavamato is doing is reminding Dhruva that his strong attachment to his brother is on the material end of things. Because there is that eternal soul that's his brother, and then the generation of species and so forth and so on has everything to do with the causation and the effect of the causation. But the causation comes from time, which is an energy of Krishna, and through the agency of time interacting with the modes of nature, then varieties come into being. Stuff. And varieties of species and varieties of everything. Varieties come by the interaction of time with Prakriti. That's what happens. Creation comes about. How does creation come about? Creation comes about by Mahavishnu's glancing over Prakriti, or Pradhan, and with his glance goes the living entities in time. And time mixes with the modes, and then you start getting varieties of the 24 elements, or Mahatattva. Just a different state of Prakriti. And then so forth and so on, so forth and so on. And you get creation. You get varieties of planets and varieties of species within those planets, and you get varieties. And it's all, but it's all an action of the living entity in time. So you become attached to that which is created by the interaction of time and Prakriti, and you're in for a sad life because it's temporary and it's gonna disappear. So don't be attached to asat. Be attached to sat. And one of the essential procedures in becoming attached to sat is understand the cause and effect of things. What is unchanging and what is changing, ever changing. Time changes. Time brings things into being, and then time withdraws those things. Time destroys things. Just stay put for some period of time, and things change. And with those changes of time, then it's this, and sometimes it's that, and sometimes it's another thing. And you're attached to it should be like this, but it's going to change because the force of time. So don't be attached to the temporary, be attached to that which brings everything about. That which brings everything about, that's Vishnu, through the agency of his potencies. Be attached to Vishnu. And be pleasing to Vishnu, because that's what bhakti is. And that has everything to do with this discussion. What's the cause? Vedanta, the whole of the Vedas, has everything to do with what's the cause of everything. The purpose of the Vedas is to become attached to Krishna, because he's the cause of everything. That's the philosophy, and then there's the feeling side, the affection or affective side of bhakti, and that's that Krishna is to be pleased. Because if we don't have Krishna is to be pleased, it's going to be some connection with something else, and that something else is to be pleased. And when something else is to be pleased, guess who's at the center? It's me. Whether the karmi, jnani, or yogi. And what's the alternative? Krishna is at the center. It's very logical, and it's also very appealing, very satisfying to the heart. So we're going to go further with this philosophy discussion. At the time, Vishnu is neutral towards all beings. As time, Vishnu is neutral towards all beings. Here we go. Here's 18 through 21. I read 18. The last sentence of 18. Thus it is understood that only by his inconceivable power is everything happening. My dear Dhruva, the Supreme Personality Godhead is ever existing. But in the form of time, he's the killer of everything. He has no beginning, although he is the beginning of everything. Nor is he ever exhaustible, although everything is exhausted in due course of time. The living entities are created through the agency of the Father and killed through the agency of death, but he is perpetually free of birth and death. The Supreme Personality of Godhead in his feature of eternal time is present in the material world and is neutral towards everyone. No one is his ally, and no one is his enemy. Within the jurisdiction of the time element, everyone enjoys or suffers the result of his own karma or fruit of activities, as when the wind blows, small particles of dust fly in the air. So, according to one's particular karma, one suffers or enjoys material life. The Supreme Personality of Godhead Vishnu is all-powerful, and he awards the results of one's fruitive activities. Thus, although one living entity's duration of life is very small, whereas that of another is very great, he is always in his transcendental position, and there's no question of lessening or increasing his duration of life. Okay, let's see what happens here. Vishnu metes out equal karmic justice, like dust is impartially moved by wind. Interesting comparison, isn't it? From Bhagavad Gita, chapter 13, text 22. What does chapter 13, verse 22 say? Karanam gunasangosya sadasadyoni janmasu. Purusha prakriti hi bhunkte prakriti jan gunan. So, karanam gunasangosya, karanam, the causation, gunasanga, association with the modes, sad asad, good fortune, ill fortune, arise. We create our own good fortune or ill fortune based upon our free will choices. By association with the modes of goodness, it goes up. By association of mode of ignorance, it goes down. And Krishna is not to blame for our choices. You could say he's to blame for giving us the capacity to choose. He should take the capacity to choose away. Then everything would be nice. Then there'd be no love. That's not nice. Love is voluntary. So there's volition involved, there's free will involved in making good choices. There's also free will involved in making unwise choices. And depending on how we exercise our free will, then it creates good fortune, ill fortune. This topic that I just spoke is part of Gopi Gita's book that she wrote on parenting. Similar understanding is there in Brahma Samhita. There's the cause of all causes, the personality of Godhead. Living entities have their relationship with the personality of Godhead, and depending upon how they're exercising their free will, they're getting consequences. Okay. Okay, so now we're moving along. Soivavamato continues speaking to Dhruva. The differentiation among varieties of life and their suffering and enjoyment is explained by some to be the result of karma. Others say it is due to nature. Others due to time. Others due to fate. And still others say it is due to desire. He's recognizing there's different philosophies out there. The absolute truth, transcendence, is never subject to the understanding of imperfect sensory endeavor, nor is he subject to direct experience. He is the master of varieties of energies, like the full material energy, and no one can understand his plan or actions. Therefore, it should be concluded that although he is the original cause of all causes, no one can know him by mental speculation. So here's a little chart. There's the Mimamsakas. They have their study of the Vedanta and the Vedas, and their opinion is fruitive activities is the cause. There's the Lokayatas, Charvak Muni. Nature is the cause, Swabhava. There's the followers of the Puranas. They say time is the cause. This is going through that list that Soivavamato gave. This is a little chart showing it. Different philosophers that have their idea of what's the cause of variety or duality in the material world. Astrologers, fate. So, yeah, go back. And the study of the Shrutis, Kama, is the cause. So there's different persons that have different ideas from study of the Vedas, and they have their whole argument, very carefully laid out arguments about cause and effect. But the original cause is not involved in all of this directly through the agencies of his potencies, and they cannot be understood by speculation. So how does this apply to Dhruva? O son, these followers of Kuvera are not the killers of your brother. The cause of birth and death of the living beings is the Lord. Oh. But no philosophers can understand the Lord's plan. So why did this happen to Uttama? Because that was one of the questions. Did Uttama do something bad? Was he implicated in this offense to Dhruva, and therefore he was killed? He had no implication in what his mother did and said to Dhruva. Here's text 23. The absolute truth, transcendence, is never subject to the understanding of imperfect sensory endeavor, nor is he subject to direct experience. He is the master of varieties of energies like the full material energy. We read this. My dear son, those yakshas who are descendants of Kuvera are not actually the killers of your brother. We read this. The birth and death of every living entity is caused by the Supreme, who is certainly the cause of all causes. The Supreme Personality Godhead creates this material world, maintains it, and annihilates it in due course of time. But because he is transcendental to such activities, he is never affected by ego in such action or by the modes of material nature. One more. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is the super soul of all living entities. He is the controller and maintainer of everyone through the agency of his external energy, which is moved by time. He creates, maintains, and annihilates everyone. So, don't kill the yakshas. You're not going to kill Vishnu either. Going now to Bhishma Dev's message Canto 1, Chapter 9, to Yudhisthira. No one can know the plan of the Lord, even though great philosophers inquire exhaustively, they are bewildered. These philosophers are all ignorant of the root cause of everything. The root cause of everything, the cause of all causes. Vishnu. The Lord creates the universe. We read this. The Lord is not to be blamed. That's one of the concluding messages. Dhruva. This is Vishwanath paraphrasing what Dhruva might be reflecting. Though I haven't been enlightened by you, I cannot give up my ego. As if he were thinking that thought, Soivavamato speaks the following verses, 27 through 35. And we're getting close to finishing here. My dear boy Dhruva, please surrender unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the ultimate goal of the progress of the world. Everyone, including the demigods, headed by Lord Brahma, is working under his control, just as a bull, prompted by a rope in its nose, is controlled by the owner. We're controlled. Who's the controller? Well, Prakriti is the controller, and Krishna is the controller of Prakriti. Maya Adhyakshena Prakriti. How is it controlling us? The metaphor is just like bulls are a very powerful animal, but they have a very sensitive part of their body, and that's their nose. And so to control the bull, they put a ring through his nose, tie a rope on this side and a rope on that side. They pull on this side, and it pulls his nose. So he moves because his nose is very sensitive. Followers of the Vedas voluntarily take the powerful human form of life, and like a ring in the nose of a bull, they're controlled by the Vedas. They submit themselves voluntarily to be controlled by Dharma, because otherwise we're going to be controlled by Prakriti, thinking adharma. Who cares? We're controlled, or we're controlled. Or we're controlled, but we're controlled. We're the servant, not the master. One who tries artificially to be the master becomes subservient to Prakriti instead of being the master. We're controlled. Everyone, including the demigods headed by Lord Brahma, everyone is working under the control, his control. So, Dhruva, submit yourself to his control. Mrityum, Amrityum. The Lord is death for the demons, but for the devotees he is Amrita, eternal life. Prabhupada's purport. Remember who you are and what you have received. Giving up your mother when you were 5 years old, wounded by the words of your stepmother, you went to the forest. Worshipping the Lord by austerities, you achieved the topmost position in the 3 worlds. He surely did. Dhruva, you're already a surrendered soul. You gave up the temporary and took shelter of the eternal Lord Vishnu. You're already a surrendered soul. Dhruva, surrender. My dear Dhruva, please therefore turn your attention to the Supreme Person, who is infallible Brahman. Face the Supreme Personality of Godhead in your original position, and thus, by self-realization, you will find this material differentiation to be merely flickering. Material differentiation meaning you lost your brother. Friend and enemy, Differentiation is not any more present in a person who is self-realized. Pandita Samadarshana. Material differentiation. Friend and enemy. You're thinking enemy. Yakshas are enemies. Give up that idea. Give up your thoughts of material good and bad. How do you do that? There are things that are bad, and there are things that are good. That you go to the direction of taking shelter of the personality of Godhead, then it's all good. Your choices are in His direction, and that's all good. Thus regaining your natural position and rendering service unto the Supreme Lord, who is the all-powerful reservoir of all pleasure, and who lives in all living entities as the Supersoul, you will very soon forget the illusory understandings of I and mine. Remember this image from before? It's all about me. That's what's over on the right side, is me, 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 me. So let go of that conception. Vishwanath is paraphrasing. Manu says to Maharaj Dhruva, you do not remember how you attained the Lord when you were 5 years old? Regaining your natural position and rendering service under the Supreme Lord, who is the all-powerful reservoir of all pleasure, and who lives in all living entities as the Supersoul, you will very soon forget the illusory understanding of I and mine. He's reminding him. Manu. So there's Dhruva living deep in the forest, undergoing his austerities. Dhruva was already liberated because at the age of 5 he saw the Lord. But he was temporarily afflicted by the illusory bodily concept of life due to his brother's death. Now, Manu reminded him that he should not continue in this conception of I and mine. This verse shows that Bhagavan is bliss itself, Anandamatre, endowed with all Shaktis, Upapana Samasta Shaktyao. It is clear from this that Bhagavan is an indivisible entity appearing with full manifestation with these Shaktis. Whereas Brahman is an incomplete manifestation without appearance of those Shaktis. Nice painting of Krishna with his transcendental form. Very sweet painting. Give up anger by my instruction, for anger is the foremost enemy for self-realization, is detrimental to those who desire liberation, makes one a source of dread for all others. Let go of anger. There's a nice illustration on the right side. Sometimes holding on does more damage than letting go. Yes? Some devotees are nodding. Okay, because of time, I'm not going to read what it says to read, 31, 32. Because you have in anger killed many yakshas, although only one was the killer of your brother, you have offended Kuvera, the brother of Shiva. What to do if we have offended somebody? My dear son, satisfy Kuvera immediately by offering respects, humble behavior, and kind words, so that the anger of great persons will not dishonor our family. Soivavamato said, your actions have been very disrespectful to Kuvera and Lord Shiva. After this, considering that Kuvera was Lord Shiva's friend, Dhruva asked Manu the benediction of always and in all circumstances being a pure devotee of Lord Vishnu. The significance is that a devotee only asks for the benediction of serving the Lord. This is Prabhupada. So he worshipped Manu, Manu departed, and that's the end. And the next session is he's going to go to Dhruva Loka. Here's a little illustration of Dhruva Loka. Where the dipper portion of the Big Dipper is pointing towards the North Star or the Pole Star, which is at the tip of the handle of the Small Dipper. That's what it looks like in the sky if you can figure out the constellations. Has anybody done stargazing and kind of tried to figure all this out? Yeah, a little bit. There's one devotee I know that's really into it. Yes. Gopal Bhatta. Got some very powerful telescopes, and he goes out from time to time to New Mexico and spends time up in a remote place where the sky is very clear and stargazing. But he's learning about, how small we are for him. It's how small we are and how grand everything is. And the Vedic texts describe it all. Anywhere. That's what's coming up. Journey home. That's tomorrow morning. We'll finish the last chapter. We just finished the chapter 11. Chapter 12 begins, Kuvera comes. He doesn't have to go offer respects to Kuvera. Kuvera comes and thanks him for giving up, just on the strength of the words of Soivavamato. He was deeply moved, very powerful Kshatriya, moved by anger at the death of his brother. But Soivavamato's words worked. Kuvera comes, offers his benedictions. Dhruva stops. He goes back to his kingdom, rules for some time. After he finishes his rule, he goes to, he turns his kingdom over to his elder son. He goes back again to Badrikashram and achieves spiritual perfection. He goes back to Godhead, goes to Polestar, which is the Vaikuntha planet within the material world. So a lot of philosophy this evening. Hope you're okay with that, because that's what Soivavamato did. Let's see if there's some discussion. Yes. Would you mind taking the microphone around?
Maharaj, about Dhruva Maharaj killing so many yakshas, although only one had offended him, really caused so much pain to him. I'm trying to see it from two, contrasting it with two situations. One is for practical, normal, regular human beings like us, like who are not Kshatriyas or kings. So what should one do when they lose a loved one due to in a very, like if their loved one is murdered,
If what?
If their loved one is murdered, not really, not
loved one is
not
murdered.
in an accident, but somebody brutally killed. I know a few people who have undergone that extreme, very, very sad experience of losing their very, very, very close loved ones. So same thing was happening with Dhruva Maharaj. He was close to his brother. His brother was killed by somebody, and then he got angry and went on a rampage. But people in current age, how should we tell them, with Krishna conscious philosophy about how to react and
How to
what.
be a caregiver to someone who lost a loved one due to murder or some great misfortune. My standard answer for a question like this is it depends. And one of the first things that's needed is not trying to explain the Krishna conscious philosophy. One of the first things that's needed is just to be a support for that person, and so that they can grieve, and in a way that works for them, and they can feel that they're supported and cared for through that difficult time. Then it depends on, the relationship with the person. It depends. It depends on your relationship with that person. Your understanding of their capacity to hear. And then depending upon their capacity to hear, you can then start to decide titrating something, into their system. Depends upon the person. You might want to read the sections where a grieving individual is pacified by a transcendental person. Yeah, very interesting section. This is not a good place to start, but where Hiranyakashipu is pacifying Diti, his mother, and the relatives when Hiranyaksha is killed, goes straight from the Bhagavatam, and what he says to help pacify them. So the death, the killing of Hiranyaksha, and the nature of that which is temporary and the nature of that which is eternal. And it's very, what he says is very interesting. I mean, he's a demon, but what he says is very interesting. So back to the circling back, I would say there's advice that the persons who run the Vrindavan hospice have shared with me, because I asked the same question: how do you help persons going through this? They have some guidelines of how to help a person who is anticipating or has lost after the effect, to help support the person who has had a terrible loss, or in a grief. How do you help a person when they're grieving? You can write to the Vrindavan Hospice, and I'm sure they have some supporting documents. I could search, and I'm sure I can find it if you want. But there's fundamental human features. I've had experience in a few cases where, say, to a devotee community, just when there in two cases, their son died suddenly. I think one case was an accident, another case was some terminal disease, and the family was deeply grieving. The devotees didn't go and preach. They just took care of their household duties. They did their house cleaning and their cooking and their grocery shopping and this thing and that and washing of clothes, and so that they could feel they had the space where they could just take care of their emotions. There was kirtan as much as it was wanted. There's not Bhagavad Gita class or anything, just giving association and affection. And they felt like, wow. So it depends. It depends on the circumstance. There may be people very remote, and just that kind of extension can't take place.
Okay.
Yeah.
And one of them really wants to take revenge. like how Dhruva Maharaj wanted. He wants to,
Get back.
find and kill the person if he can. How do we tell them,
Well, you set
how
boundaries.
yeah.
They can reject you, but depending on the relationship, you set boundaries. That person's behavior has consequence, and you do something like this that has its consequence, not just with the law, but in the universal law. Bring it to the justice people, and let the justice people bring justice. But you take justice in your own hand, and there's consequences. Universal law consequences. Taking justice into your hand. Don't do that. As they don't have a right to take life, you don't have a right to take life. There are those that have the right. You don't. And you transgress that. So please don't do that. That's I respect you. That's a feeling, a very strong feeling you have. And then depends on the relationship. Here's what Suniti said to his beloved son. Well, that's what he wanted. He didn't exactly want to kill, get back, but wanted to get back. And here's what her advice was. You ill wish others, then it will come back to you. So, depends on the person, how you handle it.
Can I ask the second part? Like this one was one
Yes.
for current age, but from the contrasting with Kshatriyas, they were supposed to do justice. Like if some, so I'm trying to think about this, say with Arjun's situation where, something bad happened to Draupadi, and now they are trying to. Duryodhan, and like there were some select people who did the bad thing, but the entire Kaurava army was killed, So how do we compare those people who were killed just because they were the soldiers of Kauravas with the yakshas, those thousands of yakshas who got killed because of one yaksha? Again, it's not an exact analogy here.
It's not exact at all.
Because this yaksha...
Those soldiers who allied themselves with Duryodhana weren't directly responsible for the acts of Duryodhana. Duryodhana is directly responsible for his actions, and Dushasana. I mean, Bhima took a vow, I'll drink his blood. So, they were demoniac rulers aligned with a demoniac ruler, and it was Krishna's will that they be liberated. And so they're responsible for aligning themselves, being demons themselves, and aligning themselves with a demoniac leader. Because those otherwise were not. But supposing, like, Drona and Bhishma, they were killed. But whether they're leaders or soldiers, they're aligning themselves with those that are against Krishna. So your question is, so you don't look pacified. Your question is, why were what is the? Well, the yakshas that were just yakshas, they didn't kill Uttama. He had no business involving them in battle. That was Dhruva's fault. But what Krishna did with the Pandavas and their army and the Kauravas and their army was Krishna's will that was enacted in the other demoniac kings being killed. That's the contrast. And specifically, we heard the yakshas that were killed by Dhruva, they didn't achieve liberation. The Kauravas, in the presence of Krishna, they achieve liberation. There's another contrast. Anything else?
Hare Krishna Maharaj. I have a question about you mentioned that one should have attachment for Krishna and then good qualities will come. But couldn't attachment for Krishna be a good quality in itself?
Oh yeah, it's the principal quality. Swarup Lakshana and the others are Tatastha Lakshana, marginal, following behind the Swarup Lakshana.
Okay, so let's have this principal good quality and then other good qualities will follow.
That's the principle. Krishna is the quality decorator. He has a big warehouse, lots of good qualities in his warehouse. When he sees somebody that has this principal quality, he starts decorating them with other good qualities. Is that clear?
Yep, thank you.
Behind you?
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Thank you for a wonderful session. You mentioned about Badrikashram. Is it same as Badrinath, they say now?
Yes, same.
Okay. And even Uddhava was also...
That's where he went.
Got
Well,
it.
this is tomorrow morning. Tune in tomorrow morning.
Got it. So even Uddhava was also asked to go to Badrikashram.
He was asked to go. That's where he went.
Okay. So what is the significance of Badrikashram? And my
What's
understanding
the significance of it?
Yeah.
It's a holy place.
My understanding is that Vrindavan is the holiest place on the earth.
Yeah, he went to Badrikashram. He didn't go to the holiest place. He went to Badrikashram.
Okay.
It's a holy place. He didn't have to go to Vrindavan.
Okay.
He went to Badrikashram.
Okay. So if we were to spend our time at one dham, my understanding was Vrindavan is the dham to be.
You're repeating yourself. And I can just repeat myself.
Okay.
Yes, it's a superlative dham. That's not where he went.
Okay. Sure.
And why did he dial Badrikashram instead of Vrindavan? I don't know. That's where he went, Badrinath.
Okay. Thank you, Maharaj.
I'm front.
Hare Krishna. I had a question about the qualities Samatvena and Samatvena, like being one in the joys and sorrows of others. I really like that, but at some points when you are like one with the sorrows of others, it also pulls you down, like personally, and you're like left overthinking, and then you feel like, oh, it would have been better if I had empathy, but a lot of detachment that I was.
So one doesn't cancel the other. Empathy doesn't cancel detachment. And detachment doesn't cancel empathy. Say the same thing differently. It's not recommended to carry the pain of others. You don't own their pain. There's a lot of pain. You get crushed. It's one of the rules of counselors. You feel empathy, but you don't carry that pain. You feel something. You want to do something. There's a cognitive part, and there's an affective part, and there's a motivational part. But you don't carry it. You don't own it. You can be an instrument of Krishna, and that's like what her question was, how to be an instrument for someone that's going through this awful situation. And it's natural to feel. Compassion is you feel the feelings of others, but you don't own them. So as an instrument of Krishna, what can Krishna do? What can you do as an instrument of Krishna on Krishna's behalf to give support to that person who's undergoing that difficult situation or happy situation? You celebrate with them, but you don't own the joy. Krishna's instrument. So the protection, the detachment part is you're the servant of Krishna. The attachment part is I'm the doer. I'm going to make this bad situation good. Anything else? Do you have something online? Okay.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. This is from Madhvi Sundari Mataji. Hare Krishna Maharaj, I have a question, like if someone is correcting me, I am getting angry and disturbed for some time, even though I know they are my well-wisher. What I need to do? How can I control my emotions? Thank you.
Well, go to the spiritual conception of who you are. If you don't go to the spiritual conception of who you are, you're in for a ride. But if you go to the spiritual, so step back from the emotion and ask yourself, what's going on here? What is this emotion and why am I feeling this emotion? That's detachment through knowledge. And it's something that's going on in my mind. It's not me. And where is it coming from? It's coming from misidentification with matter. So it's not complete just by making that step, but it can dial down the emotion. And then you start thinking of the spiritual conception. Here's a soul who knows me, they care about me, and they're offering some kindness to me. And let me accept it as an act of kindness. I may say back to them, I'm not ready to accept your kindness right now. I'm better off suffering in my lowly condition than receiving your kindness. But don't hold the other person accountable for your negative emotion. It's due to attachment to a material conception of life. So step out of the material conception of life as much as you can. Knowledge and detachment.
Second is from Sri Padma Manjari Mataji. Guru Maharaj, how does one keep Krishna as center of their thoughts while at work amongst non-devotees? How can I train my mind to think of Krishna while I'm not busy at work and with co-workers? Thank you.
This is a whole seminar in itself. And I'll give a short answer. And the short answer is 2 words. Sadhu Sangha. Then you unpack Sadhu Sangha and you have the answer. And the answer is a seminar. You through sadhus, through those who are carrying devotion for Krishna in their heart, they will be very happy to pass on bhakti. And when you receive bhakti in your heart, then you can carry bhakti in your heart, and then you can be in any situation, in the workplace or in the kitchen or in the shower or in the marketplace or wherever you are, and you're carrying bhakti in your heart. If you're carrying bhakti in your heart, you're protected from the distractions of the illusory energy, and you're seeing each situation as an opportunity of service for Krishna in different features of your life. But without bhakti, so how do you get bhakti in your heart? Sadhu Sangha. And then when you're in Sadhu Sangha, what do? Bhajana Kriya. You do with sadhus what sadhus do. What do sadhus do? Krishna Bhajan. Like what we're doing right now. Krishna Katha, Bhagavad Katha, topics about Krishna. And you do with sadhus what sadhus do. You do Bhajana Kriya. And then the bhakti will become stronger through that sadhu sangha and bhajana kriya, etc. And you keep going.
That's it.
That's it.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki. Chapter 12 tomorrow morning.